Okay, so we've started talking about density. Let's continue that conversation, and in this video we're going to talk about how we calculate density. So let me make my face a little bit smaller here so it's less in the way. Oops. All right, so density and classification of matter part 3. Our essential question today is going to be how can we calculate density in order to identify a substance, okay? Now, in order to do this, we need to know some units. So for density, our units are going to be grams per milliliter or grams per centimeter cubed. For mass, we're always going to use grams, which we abbreviate with G. And then for volume, we're either going to use milliliters or we're going to use centimeters cubed, depending on what we're measuring. Usually we'll use milliliters for liquids, centimeters cubed for solid things. Okay, so next we need to talk about some formulas. So you could memorize these 3 formulas, or you can use this density triangle, and we'll talk about how to use that in a minute. I prefer the density triangle method, but if you are using the 3, can you guys use that door? If you are using the 3 formulas, here they are, I'll give you all of them. Just put them on a table. So density. The formula for density is mass divided by volume. The formula for volume is going to be mass divided by density. Sorry, I got a couple students running around. Those 2 will know who they are. And then the formula for mass is going to be density times volume. Okay? So you could just memorize those 3 formulas if that's what is going to work for you. For me, I don't like memorizing things. Instead, what I like to do is use this density triangle. So if you just draw a triangle and then draw a T inside of it, okay? I'm going to put the D down here, the M here, and the V there. It's very important that you remember the order that these letters go in. That's probably the most difficult part of using this density triangle, is remembering how to draw it with the letters in the correct spots. But once you have it drawn, you can see that we can actually derive these formulas from the triangle. So like it says here, to use it, cover the letter you're looking for and use the remaining letters to determine the formula. So say you're looking for density. You don't know density, but you've been given mass and volume. Well, if you cover the density, you'll see that you're left with mass over volume. Density equals mass over volume, right? Say you're looking for volume. Cover up the V, you're left with mass over density, M over D. Volume equals M over D. Finally, if you're looking for mass, if you cover that up, you're left with a D next to a V. So this time it's not on top of one another, right? They're next to, and that time we are going to multiply. So if you can remember those simple rules and how to use this density triangle, I think it might be really helpful for a lot of you. So let's move on to some examples. You've got 5 examples in your notes. I'm going to do the top 3 with you so that we do 1 example of mass, 1 example of density, and 1 example of volume, and then I'll leave the last 2 up to you. So let's do example number 1. Find the density of xenon gas if 5 grams occupies a volume of 850 milliliters. So first off, let's figure out what we have and what we're looking for. So density, mass, and volume. Well, it says find the density, so I'm just going to put a question mark there. It tells us we have 5 grams, and we know that grams is a mass unit. So our mass is 5 grams. And it says our volume is 850 milliliters. 850 milliliters. Okay? So I'm going to use my density triangle to figure out what formula to use. So density, mass, and volume, okay? I'm looking for density. I don't know my density, so I'm going to cover that one up, and I'm left with mass over volume. So my beginning formula is density equals mass over volume. Now all I got to do is plug in my numbers. So my mass was 5 grams, and my volume was 850 milliliters. So if I grab a calculator, you do not need to do this in your head, but if we do 5 divided by 850, we end up with 0.005. I'm going to round that to 0.0059. Okay, so 0.005 0.59. Don't forget your units. What units are we, sorry, there's a bell. What units are we going to use here? We're going to use grams per milliliter for this one. Okay, so there's our answer, 0.0059 grams per milliliter. All right, here's example number 2. Find the mass of 250 milliliters of benzene if the density of benzene is 10 grams per milliliter. So again, first thing, finding our density, mass, and volume, figure out what we don't know. So it says find the mass, so put a question mark there. We have 250 milliliters of benzene, so that's a volume unit. And then it says the density is 10 grams per milliliter. Okay, so next step, we got to figure out the formula to use. So let's go ahead and draw our density triangle. Tiny little density triangle here, DMV. We don't know our mass, so if I cover that up, I'm left with D next to V. So M equals D times V. Let's plug in our numbers. Our density is 10 grams per milliliter, and our volume is 250 milliliters. Now we just got to do that math. If you know math, you can probably do this in your head. In fact, I know that it is 2,500 is our number. Don't forget your unit though. Remember, this is mass, and we said our mass unit is always going to be grams, right? And in fact, this milliliter here and this milliliter here cancel, which just leaves us with grams. So 2,500 grams is our answer for example number 2. Finally, let's look at example number 3. Okay, so find the volume. So I'll put a question mark by volume of silver metal that has a mass of exactly 500 grams. If the density is 10.5 grams per centimeters cubed, right? So let's find what formula we want to use. DMV. We're looking for volume this time, so I'll cover up volume. I'm left with M over D. So V equals M over D. Okay. Let's plug in those numbers. Our mass was 500 grams, and our density is 10.5 grams per centimeter cubed. Okay. Let's do that math. I don't know that one off the top of my head. The number doesn't seem familiar. Yep, 47.6. We'll just round it to there. And don't forget our unit. So this is a volume, and the grams here and the grams here actually cancel. We've been using centimeters cubed, so our unit here is going to be centimeters cubed. So there's your answer for example number 3. Hopefully with those 3 examples, you kind of understand how to do this. I'll give you a link to another video that may be helpful too if my method isn't working for you. But there we go. That's how we solve density problems. Good luck.